I know what you're thinking, Dr. Cho. I thought you said you were going to make these videos shorter. Yeah, I pretty much give up. Part of the problem is these aren't topics that I can, quickly go through. And so it turns out it's going to be like about 30 minutes a lecture for you to go through. And then with 4 lectures a week, that's 2 hours alone you're going to spend on it. But anyway, okay, so in terms of operation, what is it that I have to be concerned with? First of all, with all these pieces in my channel, I need to coordinate and make sure everything's working smoothly. And then when conflict arises, I need to manage that conflict. And so those are the big issues that I have. And part of the problem is that intermediaries and manufacturers, they kind of view each other as on the straw that stirs the drink, and they're less important. So they believe they should be whatever excess that occurs financially, meaning extra profit, that they should get a chunk of it. And so the problem is how do you manage that when everybody thinks they're the center of the universe? Manufacturers and distributors have different pressure points, meaning with the manufacturer, you have high fixed costs. I mean, think about it. You got all this equipment and floor space and everything else that's got to be paid for. Because I have high fixed costs to begin with, I need volume. I need you to sell a lot of this stuff because my startup costs are so damn high. A distributor, it's exactly the opposite. Since they have lower fixed costs, they want more margin. They want basically every unit you sell. I need you to get as much profit as possible. I need to make more on every single item that's sold. And so there's a conflict there. You got manufacturers saying, don't worry about the price, sell more, more, more. And the distributors are like, no, low volume's okay as long as the profits are high. So who drives customer behavior? And so for you, being the center in all this, you have to think about, is my brand going to be promoted properly? What level of intensity do I have? Am I logistical based or information based? Switching costs are a big deal, and that's that I don't want people to switch away from my product. Are they going to be able to adequately defend that for me? And then in terms of supporting my product, are they going to represent it in the best possible way? And so the challenge for you is, do I want to develop a control program that's, I tell them who's in charge, or is this, do I control them through power, meaning how much money I pay them or whatever? On the other hand, a control program is like I can have a distributor, and guess what? They can't make their own content. They need companies like me, and so I can control them through that way. That's an example. And so different control schemes are that there aren't any purchases, but I increase in power. For example, I own a franchise. Yeah, I pay McDonald's money, but I'm the one who actually does it. I can vertically integrate, meaning maybe I just don't have lots of middlemen. I just buy my way up the chain, and a lot of companies do that. Or another way I can gain control is through partnerships. And like the TV program Duck Dynasty had an exclusive relationship with Walmart. Though why anyone would want to buy one of those towels is beyond me. I apologize if there's anybody out there who actually owns one. Yeah, I'm always saying inappropriate things. But anyway, what about horizontal conflicts? How do I manage that? Like, for example, I have an electronic product that I'm selling through the Microsoft Store versus Amazon. And so what happens when I have dealers versus dealers? These are the things I have to manage. If I'm selling through Fry's and Best Buy and everything else, they're all competing against each other. So in terms of horizontal management, I have to set boundaries between the channels. And so the way I can do that is, one is I can separate my brands, meaning one brand can be sold through one outlet, a different brand could be set for a different outlet, so they're not really competing. I can control the distribution intensity. And what that means is that I can determine who gets what. And so you pretty much tell them, well, tough. You have to think about which, and this is what this is really about, is aligning your product to the channel. And that's what you could say. Now, what about gray markets? You have guys out there who start selling your product and they don't have permission to sell your product. So how do you handle that? And you have one of two choices. You either beat them, and that's you take them to court, you disenfranchise them, and you do everything you can, or you join them. And that's say, look, I know you guys aren't doing this. We want you to join us. Here, we're going to make you part of the family. And that way you avoid conflict and actually increase the number of sellers that you have. Now, in terms of startups, how do I go about putting together a distribution system? And the first part is you have to decide, is my distribution about information or is it about logistics? And then I have to make a decision, do I want to sell it myself digitally or do I want to go through resellers? And then pick out what channels that I want. And so and then put together my marketing mix. This is a process that you go through when you put together a distribution channel. And so here are some examples of startups and what they used. Under Armour, for example, originally sold out of the trunk of cars. And so it was all about direct sales, where something like Spotify started out as downloads. The thing is, you can have a boatload of options. You can start getting into the combinatorics of it and find out between like social web and mobile digitally versus direct manufacturers, resellers, and third parties. And so this is your challenge to trim it down to something manageable. So summing it up again, if you remember from the first slide, it's about connecting your company to a customer. And so this process and structure is what we call the distribution. What are the touch points of my sales from awareness going to my next sale? And so it's about cost. What are my touch points? How frequently do I need to talk to them? And what are my means of contacts? That's critically important for how you manage your relationship with your customer and about touching the customer. But each of those costs differently. And so these are the things I do when I touch my customer and talk to them. And one of my big challenges is picking a channel. So how do I go about do that? First of all, I have to think about my metrics. What am I interested in? And again, it could be economic, it could be sales and marketing, or it could be strategic. There's more considerations than just money. And so I look at what my options are in terms of building my vertical organization and my options horizontally. And then I have to answer the three questions. Am I about logistics and information, manufacturers and distributors, and power versus control? Because you do run into conflict. And distribution, a lot of it is about managing this conflict. And so my solution to managing this conflict is I either have to segment my products into different places that different ones sell it, or I have to try to find to make it equal between everyone. And it's about balancing power and control. So, for example, some of the big conflicts I have to manage is, do I do it digitally or do I do it physically? And a lot depends on, if I want richness, I'm going to go for physical. If I want reach, I go digital. Manufacturers and distributors, it all depends about, do I want volume or margin? It's about power and control. Direct versus distributors. Again, do I segment them and give them different pieces? Or it's a big enough pie for all of you. And so that's what you have to like. And what if my horizontals are fighting? Again, it's, do I segment my products to different people? Or do I make it all equal? And then what happens when I reach the gray area and people kind of are selling my product and shouldn't be? Do I beat them or do I join them? And so that's what distribution is about. And so it's making all these pieces flow together. But the crux of it all is the way I touch my customer doesn't line up with what my product and what my company is all about.